enabled the Zoom AI companion in order to be able to do a summary of this that I'll be able to post later online. So you can watch for that, and so that'll be happening. And we are also recording this presentation so that we can place it up on our on-demand page. So I'd just like to let everybody know about that, about what exactly is going on here with that. So some guidelines. We do have a lot of people that are signed up today for this workshop. So number one is that you can use the chat. And that's going to be the primary way that you can ask questions and that you can communicate with us. We do have an extra person, Haley Wood from the Mass Councils on Aging, is going to be in the chat to be able to help you out if there's anything that you need. Remember to be respectful and supportive. We never had an issue with that with our group, but here we are. Cameras are optional, so you don't have to have your camera on, whatever you feel comfortable about. If you're in the chat, make sure that you stay on topic. Don't start talking about your dog or whatever. Let's just try and stay on topic. The host may manage your microphones and chat if needed, and if the technology acts up, don't worry. Try to log out first and then log back in, and you can contact Haley in the chat, and she might be able to help you out with whatever problems that you might be having. So, and this is something that was a quick add in here before we started. We're working in cooperation with Mass Hire Career Center with this particular presentation. So please start off by indicating in the chat if you are a job seeker or a working professional. It helps us out here at 50 Plus Job Seekers and at Mass Hire so that we know who's on first and what's on second and all that. So thank you for doing that in advance. We appreciate it. So I am going to stop sharing, and I'm introducing your host for this presentation and workshop today. Here is George Armstrong. So we're going to get things started. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Eric, for that introduction and all that information. And I just want to let everybody know we're dog lovers. I am. And,
Not
although
to
I'd be
say that,
interested, I get Eric's point, but, just to be sure we're not dissing dogs.
no, not in any way.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so welcome and one quick note I noticed Haley put in the chat. If you have questions, put them in the chat with a Q in front of them generally. I want to kind of stay away from coming off mic and being too interactive with a large audience like this. It could get really time consuming. We've got a lot to get through today, so I want to make sure that we can get to most of it and all of it if we can, and have a little time at the end for Q&A. So, there's a lot, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. We've got a varied audience. Most of these things that have to do with AI right now, you're going to run into varied audiences, meaning that some of you may be using AI on a regular basis. Some of you may be just new to it and trying to learn about it. And that's fine. We're going to try to get to all of it, and we need the time to do that. We'll see how it goes near the end. Okay. So thank you very much. If you can use that cue in the chat to make sure your questions are clearly separated, we can save them. Okay. So Eric, I'm going to start sharing my screen now, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
We can.
Okay, great. All right. So, as Eric said, I'm George Armstrong. I'm a certified career coach, and my focus is on age-related transitions and being purposeful. So, with today's presentation, that's what I want to focus on really is, what does it mean to be purposeful? What does it mean to use AI to help you do that? How can you make the most of both worlds? What you can bring to the table and what AI can help you with, okay? And some of the cautions and tips and things that we come across that are hot in, let's say, in the business. All right, so hang on one second now. Let me get rid of this. And we'll be able to see that. Okay. So let me see. From Chris to the slideshow. Okay, so I think you can see my slide now. It says George Armstrong right at the top, and then I'm going
Yes.
to move on from there. So welcome everybody. And what I want to really impart today is a few things. First and foremost, and keep this in mind throughout this presentation, I'm going to be stressing a lot that AI should be your partner. Okay. And you can use AI to do a lot of things, but keep it in mind that it's your partner. So these are going to be some strategies that you can use to partner with AI. The first thing is develop your story. So as you start in your job search, the most important thing you can do is know who you are. That's your story. So that's going to play into everything you do. You got to know that. Then researching companies and industries. That's going to be where you extend. You go outside your internal story and you start to bring it externally. You need to know where to do that. So we're going to try to work on how do you research companies and industries with the help of AI and some other tips as well, maybe not AI. And developing networking connections and communications. Okay, so networking is going to be strung throughout this. And as you get to know me, if you don't already, you'll know that, and anybody with our job seekers group, networking is king. Networking is where you should spend a lot of your time. So having good strategies and having AI help you with that can be really beneficial to your job search. And so that's pretty simple. Prepare and practice for interviews. How do you do that? What do you use? What tools can you use that AI is now furnishing that you didn't have before that you can do some practicing with? And of course, you can always practice with us. We have interviewing sessions, interview practice every month. So you can join us and look at the online calendar. And we'll have links for all that stuff we can put in the chat. But look at our online calendar. You can get interviewing practice as well. And then what's important about who we are? And I'm saying we as this group that's on here today, assuming we're all, most of us are in that 50 plus age group, right? What is your maturity in the workplace mean? How do you build that into your story, make it a positive foundation? And what can AI do to help you do that? So that's very important right now. Okay. So we're going to all learn a little bit about that today. I've been learning about it as I go, and I'm sure, as I said, a lot of you folks are um, getting into the process of figuring all that out, and we'll take it from there and kind of build on it. Okay. So the first thing I want to do, Eric, can you put up the first poll that we have? We have a few polls just to give us a sense of who's in the audience and how you feel about this stuff.
Yes. Let's see.
Okay.
And hold on
Do
a
I have
second.
to stop sharing, Eric? Or
No, I don't think so.
okay.
No, no.
No, there it is. You're good, good.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Oh,
So AI skills are important in my job search. Give us a sense for what you think about this.
quite helpful.
Mhm.
Do we?
Okay. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, we'll give you about, we'll give you about a minute to think about this and answer.
Sure.
Mm,
Yeah. Good. Good. Well, the good thing that I'm seeing is that there's nobody in the not at all space.
Yeah, yeah.
So, uh,
So I'm
I don't know
gonna,
if we have. I don't know if we
yeah,
have all believers here, Eric, but we've got a lot of people who think it could be helpful.
yeah, yeah.
So that's good to
So
know.
I'm just gonna share the results out so everybody can see the poll, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and if you want to take that
So,
down, I'll go back to them.
yep.
stop again.
Oops,
Let me back up.
there we go. Good.
There we go.
All right, very good. So you're amongst people in this room. It looks like a large majority of you folks are all finding it quite helpful. So we'll do a few more polls as we go along, not only about AI, but how you're feeling about networking and interviewing. We'll get to those. But if we can take that down now, I don't know if you have already, but so to get back to the where we're going to go with this program, basically we need to know the reality, right? The reality in today's world is that the job market isn't what it used to be. You need to know what's going on out there. You need to be able to feel where the labor market is right for you, everything that is going on that might impact you in the industries you're working in. What are people already in those jobs doing that you might, kind of jobs you're trying to say. So, yeah, the biggest thing you need to do though is differentiate. Because if you're going back into, you're looking for a job, even if you're transitioning, you got to be able to differentiate, right? So that's all about mindset. Differentiation is a mindset. You got to be able to say to yourself, what are they looking for? And I'm gonna start right now telling you because I have a belief system that says that networking is the foundation for interviewing. So if you think about that, the process of networking is the foundation of where you're going to go when you finally find the interview. When you get to the interview, a lot of the networking you've done is going to help you establish how you respond to questions in an interview and tell your story, right? You need to know this. What is the employer thinking? The best way you can do that, put yourself in their chair. So if you get that mindset of, what can I do? What what can I do to help this company? Because that's what they want to know. They want to know what problems you can solve for them. You got to be able to work on that, and maybe AI can help you with that, right? So we're going to get to that. Some of the details on how you can actually use AI to do that. And a lot of you people may already, according to that poll that I saw, you may already be doing some of this stuff. That's fine. And when we get to the Q&A, we'll have time. If you want to share, I would be interested. I'm sure the people online would be interested in some of the best practices that you're doing, okay? And compare them with what I'm going to present here. So where do we start? Okay. The next thing that you want to do is look at your story. As I said, you want to be able to go back in and say, okay, who am I? Start internally, right? Everybody start from the inside out. That's a good book. If you find it, read it. It tells you a little bit about why it's important that you start from the inside out. Okay. And the truth here is that Godspeed, nobody's coming for you. That's the market right now. And I'm sure you've all felt and heard some of the things that are going on that make it even more difficult than it has been in the past. There's a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of uncertainty. Employers are feeling a lot of uncertainty. So you have to be able to come in and clear the deck and say, what is my story? Here's how it matters to you, Mr. Employer, Mrs. Employer. Okay. And better you know that story, the easier that's going to be to do. And you'll get to where, and you're going to hear me say this over and over again, you could be conversational. That's the target here, to become conversational about your story and then learning what their story is and how do you marry the two, right? Very simple math there. So when you think about your story, I love this quote here, you're born an original, so don't die a copy. The most important thing about your story, remember what I said about differentiation, is what makes you different. Well, first I can tell you that being able to tell your story well will make you different. A lot of people don't do this. A lot of people skip this and they look at their resume and they think they're going to deal with the bullet points of their experiences rather than tell their story. Your story is your purpose. And as we get to see what employers are looking for, that's a big thing that can help you establish that you're going to be a good employee, is knowing your purpose. So when you look at your origin, you can use the examples of somebody in my life had an illness, and it started me thinking about looking at ways that that can be dealt with. So from that perspective, I said, I want to do this. I want to get into this career field. And that drove me. That's your seed, right? That's the original origination of your why, your purpose. Another good book is Start with Why by Simon Sinek. So if you ever see that one, grab it and read it. It's really good about helping you understand why is important. Okay. So your history, right? So this is where the challenges you faced, how you did that, what you responded with, how you helped other employers in similar situations. Your history is very important. Your experiences, all the things that you did and delivered on. And then reflection, right? In telling your story, you think through these things and then you reflect on how it all comes together and what brings it together to be your whole story, right? The whole you. This is not important just for the employer. Let me not make that mistake. A lot of this is about meeting the employer's needs and what they want. Just as important is knowing what you want. This is a two-way street, this thing of finding a job and finding a career path and all your commitments and loyalty. That's a two-way street, and it's an exchange of what you're going to do for them and what you want them to do for you. So reflection will help you make sure that you're sticking with your value system. You're doing the things that are important to you so that you're not facing this again very soon. So make sure you're doing that, reflecting all the time on where you are with your story. And this is a work in progress. It's not you don't sit down and tell your story and there it is, and then you lay it out. I know how many times I've changed my LinkedIn about profile and things like that, right? So it's always something that new ideas come, new memories come of how things worked. I hear other people talking about what they did. And then I roll that in and say, oh, maybe I could, kind of revisit mine. Your goals and aspirations are very important, right? So even though, again, we want to work to make sure that we understand what the employee wants from their side of the desk, your goals and aspirations are just as important. As I said, it's a two-way street, and they can always change as you move forward. I just heard something recently that I think relates to this. It was, I don't need to see the entire course to be able to take my next step. So it's important that you know your plans, but realize they could change, right? So a lot of things get processed. All right. So defining your perspective. So knowing your story includes what is your perspective? When an employer talks to you, when somebody you're going to network with wants to talk to you, they want to know where you're coming from. So what is your perspective? Are you no oak or a lotus? I like this. Do you bend? Are you flexible? Are you open-minded? Or are you kind of like, this is the way it is? And I'm not saying one way is better than the other. I'm saying know yourself, right? What are your values? What's core to you? And this goes both ways, personally and in work, right? So you want to be able to say, okay, I'm true to my values. My values go across my whole being, not just who I am at work. Well, my values, I have to go home and sleep at night with what I did, what I do at work. And that can be very positive. That can be a very positive thing. It helps you stay motivated. And, this is something that I would say is a real motivational kind of thought process. What problems does the world have that you want to solve? Think about that. Allow yourself to open up. What is that inner child in you desiring to do that maybe you didn't do before? Put away for a minute all the naysayers, all the people who are saying, yeah, but you need to get a job. Yeah, but you don't have those skills. Yeah, but this, yeah, but that. In this portion of thinking about your story and reflecting, it's so valuable to open your mind and be curious and let that flow. Let that curiosity just flow. Okay. And I think a lot of us find ourselves, if you've had multiple jobs over time and you really analyze, well, am I following my path? And this is the famous thing that when people on their deathbed usually say, they don't usually say, I want to work another day. But what they do say is that I wish I had the courage to follow my own course. Following and knowing your own course comes with that being able to really truthfully say, what do I want to do? Allow yourself to dream and do that. Again, all part of telling your story. It sounds fluffy, but it's real. It'll come back for you if you do this kind of thing, and that's your basis moving forward. It'll really help you stay on track, put up your guardrails. And who do you think about as mentors? Think about that. If you're having struggles with how do I get my perspective, where have I been? And this can happen a lot when a job seeker is stuck because they first of all don't understand why that company they worked for 28 years just let them go. That can be really hard to deal with. And so it brings up a lot of questions, right? So you start to ask, well, was I in the right place? How do I get to the right place? I haven't thought about this in years. Why should I do that? So all those things that come up that can be blocks, you can think about these kind of questions. Who do I have for mentors? Why did I look up to them? And touch back to those values that were important to you then, and get related to the values. And then how do they apply now? How do I move forward with that? What can I use to benefit my job search now? And then, skills and knowledge. A lot of HR people and hiring managers are looking at a lot of highly skilled people right now. And this comes down to differentiation. If you know your skills, you know your background and experiences well enough to know maybe I need to upskill in certain areas. Well, that's good. Then you can, put some of your job search time and energy into that. But otherwise, how do I fit in the picture? If I go for an interview, how many people are fully capable of this? And a little trick to this thinking is that if you got into the interview, they already believe you have the skills. If you're there, they're not there just to have you repeat what's on your resume. They saw you have the skills. That's what got you the interview. So now it's how do I make sure that I can talk about or move this conversationally to where they see that my skills are going to be able to help them specifically, more specifically than most people would. That's the key, right? So knowing your skills, knowing your experience, how did that happen? That's the question, right? It's not just that you have it. It's how did you get it? How did you acquire it? Maybe you can use it here too. Okay. So once you have your story, once you're feeling comfortable internally that you can, start to talk about this. And trust me, I think one of the first things I want to say on this slide is that this is not often a linear thing, especially when there's abrupt disruption that maybe, uh, uh, the the issue here is that you've got to all of a sudden reset. And so it doesn't usually happen that you get unemployment, then you get LMI. First of all, you're going through a shock, the shock of having to do this. So when you think about the process of how do I get to where I can set my course again, this pyramid kind of has that hierarchy of needs that can help guide that. But the LMI thing, the beginning of this, the start for research, that has to be kind of the basis. But I would say that networking, which doesn't appear on here, could even start in your prior employment, but it has to overlay everything. In fact, if networking was shown on this chart here, I would say it would be a vertical line from the bottom to the top. The most important thing is that all the way along the way, you're tapping into people to help you find where you can start to tell your story, where you start to roll it out there. So don't think of this as linear. I'm going to get one thing done, the LMI, then I'm going to do my marketing materials. In a sense, you kind of have to work on it all together, right? You have to build the plane while you're flying it, that overused adage, but it's kind of the truth. But you have to keep networking as the most important part of it all. Don't let that ever slide, no matter where you are in the process. And I'm a strong believer that people will understand if they, you don't have to worry about people saying, yeah, well, when you're ready, come back, right? When you're networking, the whole idea is you're kind of gaining information that help you move to your next stage. People understand that. So I would encourage you to always think of networking in that sense. Okay. Hang on 1 second. I have to take a little break. Excuse me. All right. So now you have to put together a couple of things: your assets, your aspirations, the market information that you have. Does it all work out? Is it all compiled into something that you can really attack as a job seeker? So how do you put that all together? The first thing I always say is, if you've got your purpose, you kind of know your why, you're not going to, as here, fall asleep at the switch. You're not going to be wondering what you're doing and just finding yourself job searching through application processes that are probably not going to get you, they're only going to get you stressed, really. So knowing the why is the important thing. And then putting that together with all your skills, all your experiences, all of that, that's great. You kind of know how to package it. And then the third part of this, and you have to have all three, is somebody going to pay you for that, right? That's the important thing. This is a job, right? This is a career. You have to be able to think about it in those terms. That all looks great, but is there a market for it, right? Will somebody actually pay me for it? So putting that together, and this is where we're going to start to get into using AI. Let's see here. Eric, could you put up the next poll, please? Actually, we can do the two, one right after the other.
Sure. Let's see. Let's go to poll 2. And this one is: do you believe AI can help you with your job search? Yes, no, maybe, or with some upskilling. So far, we got nobody that's saying no.
That's good.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so yeah, it looks like the vast majority of people.
The
There's some
vast
maybes in
majority of
there.
people are, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and with some upskilling, I guess that's kind of a maybe. But I think the important thing here is to realize that AI is here to stay. We can I can cite you all kinds of information about AI being, there's some people that think it's on the rope. Salesforce pulled back from a lot of their AI initiatives, and one of the biggest um, customer marketing tools in the world. They pulled back from their AI stuff, and saying that, that it's not proven, the ROI is not there. All of that really should be unimportant to us as job seekers, or you as job seekers, because what's really important is, how is this going to impact the job market that I'm looking for, the particular jobs at these companies, and then what can I do to make myself prepared to use AI, not necessarily to make AI everything that's in front of you, but a little bit of upskilling that can show that you can talk about it in an interview and in networking. How is AI impacting this thing? a lot of questions you can ask in networking about AI. How is it impacting your job if you're talking to somebody that you found that's important to you? Okay, Eric, I think we can. You want to do the second poll on there? I think that's a.
You want to do poll number 3?
Yeah, poll number 3. Mhm.
Well, let me see if I can. No, it keeps. Okay, here we go. Poll number 3, which is, are you currently using AI in your job search?
Yeah,
Yes,
so
no, or I will if you can show me how.
okay, so very
Wow,
few no's there.
lot of yeses, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and some people are looking for some information. Yeah, so we're leaning towards we've got a good base of users on here
Yeah,
that are already using AI. So yeah, so maybe some of the tips we can help, and for the people who are in the "I will if you can show me how" group, yeah, you should be able to pull some good tips from this presentation, and from the people at the end when we get to Q, and it looks like there's a lot of people who could share good information with you. And I would encourage people that seeing this poll, I would say, if you've got good information you can share, dump some in as we go along, dump some into the chat, share with people. This is networking. We're a networking group, so please share that along with how to get a hold of you through LinkedIn if you want to put in your LinkedIn profile. So good. So if we can take that down, Art.
well, I thought I did. So is it gone now, George? Part of the problem is that I don't see the poll.
Yeah, I see. I just deleted it, but I think it's down. I'm not sure
Okay,
if
all
anybody
right.
else could. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
So getting back to this, the presentation portion of it here. Um, so when you start with LMI, you want to ask the questions that are going to start to uncover the course. And the course is, how do I get to the target industries or companies that I want to talk to? And also then on the networking side will become, and the people who are in that industry or companies that I want to talk to. So the ones that can help me grow. And remember, AI is your partner. We can't let AI step in and become the driver of the situation. You're the captain of the ship. You're the one who's going to determine what goes out in your communications. And the worst thing that can happen is if you're using AI and just complacently saying, AI said this in your mind, and then repeating that in a discussion, you run the risk of being really kind of proven to be wrong, right? So you don't want to get on that side of it where you haven't checked the sources. Check the citations, check it against what you know. Your judgment cannot be replaced by AI. It's as simple as that. So make sure that everything that goes out in terms of communicating what you get from AI is vetted through your judgment and what this means to me and what it really means to the people that I'm talking to, and then therefore checking citations to make sure you're not feeding them something that's going to make them question the trust that you're trying to build. All right, and listening to your gut. That's kind of what I'm trying to say here, right? That's the end portion of this. All right, let me get to where I can. Okay, so in terms of using the AI to author your story. So you've got to be the one. You're the one creating the story. Don't let AI create it for you. It's got to be, in the end, and this is the most important thing, as I said, conversational. And I always think of this: author and authentic have the same roots. So if you want to be authentic, which is a big key in stating your purpose and how it fits to help an employer, then you want to author it. So don't let AI take you out of that role. Um, and again, this is from Joe Procopio, who's an author that I follow about AI, and he uses the spot check. He's been an AI engineer for years, and he says just uses the spot check, but beware of this, not too much. So when you're looking for information, what's too much? You can go down the rabbit hole on AI and really end up chasing all kinds of things, right? So keep it in context. Become competent, but don't overdo it. So you might think, well, AI, and then let's talk because this is in two levels, right? How do I use AI in my job search, and how do I use AI in the job that I'm going to land? So that's two different perspectives on AI. But in the second one, then yeah, you might need to know what certifications you might need and that kind of thing. But if you think you need certifications up front and you're not sure, I wouldn't worry too much about it at this stage. Right now, the thing that you want to focus on is how can I use this in my job seeking? Okay. And stay with that because you can become overwhelmed. And it's the habits that we build, right? And this is something else that I found. One expert said the people who come out of this well won't be the ones who mastered one tool. They'll be the ones who got comfortable with the pace of change itself. So make a habit of experimenting, try new things, even when the current things are working. Get comfortable being a beginner repeatedly. That adaptability is the closest thing to a durable advantage that exists right now. And that, for everybody who is working in and around the hiring field, adaptability is one of the strongest things that people are looking for right now in candidates. So use this opportunity to say, I'm adapting. I'm moving to AI. I didn't want to do it, whatever it is, but use it. And then if you really need it in your job, make sure you're doing that. Okay. So now the next thing is I want to just review this, right? What's your mindset? And there was a part of that phrase that I just read about using the beginner's mind. And when you're networking, so let's flip this over a little bit. You you're going to use prompts that are going to take you to places that you're going to be on the other side of the desk. You're going to be trying to get in people's minds, and you're going to try to help learn how can I help them. That's why you want to do this. So you want to really be able to say, I'm going to use AI to help me find information that I can use in that networking process, that I can then create some communications with people and say, I'm seeing this. Let me check with you. You're in that role now. I just would like to meet and see if we can do an informational interview, that kind of thing. So you're using AI to make sure that you're in that what we call the give to get mode. That's the key of networking is what can I give on a regular basis that people are gonna, even without me asking, want to give back. You want to put them in the mindset of I want to help this person. And they do. So many people say one of the biggest problems with networking is, am I going to be able to, are these people going to want to help me? So I want to, Eric, can you run up the poll on networking now? I think that's number 4.
Sure. So this one is, what are your biggest networking challenges? And maybe you want to talk a little bit, George, about that word procrastination.
Yes, procrastination. It's a phrase that I have to attribute this to Kendra Lee, who's a marketing AI expert that I came across. I really like her, and she uses that phrase, procrastination. and it can apply to networking, it can apply to interviewing, right? So when we think about mm, how do we go about networking, what's the preparation? It can be intimidating. It's interesting.
Mm.
Hmm. Answered about the job. Okay. So it looks like we're clustering up around the procrastination, the
Yeah.
research, the practice, those kind of things that can be daunting. I'm a little surprised that on the speaking side, most people look like they feel comfortable with speaking. That's good. And listening. Okay. There's no people are saying that listening is a problem.
Mm.
Hmm. I'm going to touch on that more as we go. But
All right. I'm going to quit the poll here. But
yeah, yeah. Okay, very good. All right. So, networking and Eric, this prompt here, um, is this the one you were going to do? We're going to do a prompt. We're going to show you folks how to do a prompt. So the key in AI is knowing what to do with prompts, right?
yeah,
So
this is the one I'm going to do, George. Yep.
yeah, so Eric's going to do a little demo on this prompt that we created here. It's kind of a starter prompt. How would you use this to begin with your figuring out a course on AI? So why don't you go ahead, Eric, and take that.
Yeah, I'm going to share
You
my
want me to
screen
stop
here,
sharing?
George.
So I'll stop.
Okay. And it
Okay.
looks like I'm up there. Okay. So what I did was to use the prompt that you see on the slide. And by the way, it's probably a time for me to mention that in the summary that I just slid into the chat there, all these prompts that George is going to be talking about are in that summary, so they are ready for you to be able to copy and paste into your own favorite chatbot here, to your own favorite AI. So this one I happen to use ChatGPT. So I asked it to provide a list of the top 20 companies in the northeast U.S. market that would be valuable for networking and informational interviews. Acting as a career coach, provide the roles, LinkedIn links, and a brief summary of their background on their profiles, and also provide a conversation starter topical suggestion that I can use to introduce myself to each one. Wow. Okay. This sounds complicated, but let's take a look at what ChatGPT came back with. They came back with a specific person, okay, and a specific thought starter for the specific person. Goldman Sachs, just for, again, came back with a specific person and a conversation starter. Liberty Mutual. So they weren't able to, apparently, to find a person, but at least that they were able to, give us a conversation starter in, conversation. So you see, and of course, this might not be specific, this isn't going to be specific to everybody's situation, but it gives you an example here of how I was able to put that prompt in there and how it gives you a little bit of information here about, again, this is a starting point, a starting point. Okay, so it's not the beginning, middle, and end, but it's maybe the beginning for you is to take a look at this. So that's a prompt again that is in your summary. that you can take a look at, and you can give that a try for yourself, and you can make it so that, and you can define that so that it will be most helpful for the type of job that you're looking for. I mean, it gets into technology and all of these companies, and again, the thought starter, Amazon, Google, in the in the education and nonprofit area. So,
And so,
you know,
Eric, if you, I'm sorry,
yeah,
if you, I mean, some of these conversation starters are great, right? So these are things that you could actually grab from this list an entire, in my experience, a lot of career coaches and people who are professionals in this industry spend a lot of time gathering these lists of these kind of questions. This is phenomenal in terms of giving you some ideas on the kind of questions you can ask for networking and interviewing. I'm sorry, Eric. I just wanted to
yeah, no, I
put that
mean,
in there.
and it even, and now ChatGPT and I have a relationship. ChatGPT knows me, okay, because I use it for a lot of stuff that 50 plus job seekers is involved with. So down here, it even got into, because of your 50 plus job seekers program, right? So it knows, it knows that, about the program, and it's even going to give you some next steps.
I like that. It's you're not job seeking, you're ecosystem building.
Yeah, I know, isn't that cool?
Stolen from AI. Hmm.
So, and it even, and there's sources that are listed here, so you can get the source. But I mean, it's saying if you want more information, just say the word.
Say the word. Hmm.
So, so this is something that you know how they say don't try this at home. Well, in this particular case, try this at home because it might be something that can really help you out. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I'm
so
glad you said that,
thanks.
Eric.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks for letting me cut in a little here, George. Yeah, it was interesting.
No, I appreciate it, and it's very helpful because one thing that you said there, just at the end, it's important for people to understand prompting is your personal approach. This is strategically how you want to go about asking these questions in these AIs. And as you'll see, we're going to move on a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about the how to use AI to iterate the discussion.
Right.
So this is the beginning, right? This is just a baseline kind of to build with AI that you can say, okay, where do I start? And then you can match this. And by the way, I continue to say, always go back and double check. Is this valid? Is this real? And in most AI tools, you can ask for citations. You can even add on to the prompt and cite where the information came from so that you're not, as I said before, stepping into landmines when you're out there using some of this and putting those little tidbits into your discussion starters, just to make sure that they're real, double checking, right? Always double checking. So communicating, right? So as I said a number of times, the key to all of this, no matter what you take out of AI, is to become conversational about differentiation. So how do you do that? Well, becoming conversational itself that's a practice, and it's not going to come. You're not going to go to a 3-day school and learn that. But the FBI has, for their hostage negotiators, this active listening, these thoughts on active listening. So they have this whole thing that they put their people through to learn to active listen. It's no different when you're networking or even in an interview. People go into interviews thinking, I've got to tell them. Well, a really good perspective to take is, I want to learn from them. And how do you prepare to do that? You prepare through doing the research you need to go into the interview with questions. We don't need more answers. We need more better questions, right? So employers know that. And they are really impressed when people come in with a learning mind. They want to learn. The best way to learn is you can ask the question, tell me more, right? And when you're networking and you say that, tell me more, people will open up. What's the number one thing people want to talk about? They want to talk about themselves. So if you prompt that in a networking discussion, you're going to get that. Now, the key then is to listen. And that is even deeper differentiation. When somebody knows you're listening to them, what are you making them feel? They're feeling like they're being heard. I don't know about you, but it makes me feel real good when I think I'm being heard. And Maya Angelou, I think it was, who said, people will rarely remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. You want to know how to help them feel better? Listen to what they're saying. Listen actively. That means intentionally, without a bunch of things in your own head. And these are the keys, right? Listen to what they say, don't interrupt, nod, let them know when you're in the networking or interviewing situation, letting people know that you got it, you're hearing them, and then giving them the visible cues, right? So without being awkward, this is important because a lot of people feel like, well, I'm going to be awkward if I start to get into this stuff and I'm not sure. I don't, my habit is not to do this, but I've got to grow this habit. Um, try, try to think of it this way. You're delivering something that's probably of value. And if they're good people, they're not going to, even if it isn't of value, they're going to just tell you and say, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, no problem. So you don't have to worry about it. But without being awkward, repeat back to them what they're saying. This is a big thing. We used to call this porcupining in my industry, and I was in sales and marketing for decades. So this is porcupining. They throw it to you, you throw it back to them. It's always a question. Tell me more. Why do you feel that way? What's happening in the field that makes you think that? Those kind of questions. Porcupining is very big, right? So inquire, and ask the questions that show that you've been paying attention. As we get down to the bottom of this presentation, I'm going to talk more specifically about interviewing habits. And this is gold. If there's nothing else you take from this other than the AI stuff, I would say this is gold. If you can create questions to end an interview that come from the conversation you're in, you will impress beyond probably 80% of the people who are your competition easily. You've been listening, you've been paying attention, you're geared into, what you're thinking all about what the company's challenges are, and you're listening to them talk about them, and then you're coming up with something. That's the beginning of a good relationship for an employer and an employee. Okay. So think about those things. But I thought it was valuable to share this, right? Communicating as you're presenting. Excuse me. All right, Eric. So let's bring up that poll again, and let's use it about interviewing. So a little different than networking, but not much. So it's about building a trusting conversational relationship. So let's take a poll on that, Eric, if we can.
So this one is, what are your biggest interviewing challenges? Again, getting back to procrastination. Don't know why I can't say that. Research, practice, speaking, listening, uncertainty about the job, or uncertainty about my goals.
Something that I've noticed here, practice thing is big. The procrastination is nowhere near it was for networking. And speaking, there's people that are thinking that speaking is a challenge. We didn't see that with the networking part.
Yeah.
Yet to me, that's, you know, being able to speak or communicate, let's even broaden that, in networking can be the beginnings of how you get to be better at interviewing. So anyway, just a couple things I noticed. Yes, you want to take that down.
All right.
All right. So let's get back to the preparation for how do you impress the interviewer? How do you make them um, respond in a way that they say you're the right person? And these are the three top interview questions I think that people get really chill about is tell me about yourself, why us, and why should we hire you? Meaning specifically you. Okay. So these are difficult questions. People that tell me about yourself when throws people everything I see in the career coaching field, that's still at the top of the list. People, that question can throw people for a loop. And then there's other behavioral questions, like that you about your experience and what you did before. But these are the ones that I think are going to be, and you can do the why should we hire you? That could lead into talking about your experiences, right? And some of these are questions that you really want to be ready to answer in your own conversational tone, but more importantly, about your own story. So tying this all back to your story, right? Tell me about yourself. Why us? The why us question, that's one that it really just is. Let me just say, George, you're in here interviewing with us. There's 25 companies that are within 10 miles of us that do the same thing. Why us? And when you think about that, what they want to know is how do you differentiate yourself? And how do you look at this company's problems from that perspective? So if you can tie that together on the why us question, what are your problems? Where did you find out what the problems are? Maybe through LinkedIn, maybe through, AI, using new tools, but networking is really the key. So if you can, the more you can network, the more you can find out about what's actually going on inside of a company before you get to the interview, the more you can research that and come up with a few bullet points. Because I'm saying the more you can do that, but the idea is to be able to funnel that down and filter it out to 3 or 4 bullet points that make you a smart communicator with a few questions to ask them. People often think, I'll get my chance to answer the questions at the end. No, ask your questions throughout the interview. The questions you've prepared, make sure that they're on point about the problems they have and how you can solve them. And nobody's going to be offended by you asking those questions out of order. They're going to want to talk about that. They will skip right to the heart of the matter. Trust me. They're not going to be looking at you and saying, oh, well, let's get through and make sure we know all your skills. They already have that. It's on your resume. They could have read it. You get the chance now to bring it all together and say, why you? Because my origin story said, George, go do this. I started down that path and you are dead on to my next target. Of course, I'm summarizing, but that's what you want to get to. Why did my story bring me to you? Okay. That's a good way to answer that question. Anyway, the AI prompts that you see on this screen, we're not going to go and do those, but these are just some that you could use. And as Eric said, they're in the handout, so don't worry about trying to capture them here. But these are just some samples that you can use if you're interviewing for a role, right? So based on this company, what are 3 interview questions that they're going to ask me? How do I answer them? And then you can, and I want to hear it as a career coach. And well, give it to me. You're always telling AI how you want to hear the answer to the prompt. And we'll get to ways to do that. But provide me 5 sample questions and 5 sample answers. Base the questions on my attached resume and LinkedIn profile and job description. Give it some information to work with. If you don't, it'll come back and say, you know what, I'd love to answer your question, but give me this information. So, you know, make sure that you've got your documents, the things that you can help AI with to learn a little bit about you. It'll scan all that stuff and put together a profile of you that you can then use that as the basis point for having this conversation. As Eric said, you know, he's got a relationship with AI. You're starting to create that relationship. All right. So, and again, I want to iterate, don't chase every shiny object that you find on AI. You know, you just want to know how you can show them, if you can, show them how you used AI in the process. Again, conversationally, right? Make sure that you're showing them that you're not afraid of AI. In fact, in our age group, that is probably one of the strongest things you can do is show them that you've learned to partner with AI and you see the value of it. Okay. Go back here. So let's go back to the basics for a second. I just want to reiterate, what are employers looking for? What are their wants and needs? And let's make sure we're touching on the right things here, right? So they want to know you can solve their problems. You can help them sleep at night, make their lives easier. You can let them get on to something else. There's this differentiation thing. And one strategy that I've heard is that a hiring manager wants to know, are you the same or different? That's all they want to know. It's not my job. My regular job as a manager is to do these things. I have to come into this hiring process. I'm part of the team, but I want to know, because I've done 18 interviews already. I'm tired of this. Tell me how you're different, same or different. That's what if you're not the first one in, that's what you're going to be, you know, they want to know that quickly. Tell me how you're different, right? And let them get on to something else. And the interviewers want to know, basically, can you do the job? And this is an important one for us in this age group. Will you want to keep doing it? All the studies on our mature age group show that a big concern of employers is that we may not want to keep doing the job. So that could be a problem, right? And then the other one is culture. Do you fit in? You know, you can learn a lot about that on AI as well. There's all kinds of things you can do with prompts to make sure that you're ask it, practice, experiment, and see what brings you back for culture questions as separated from skills and experience kind of questions. It's a great thing. And I want to stress this as importantly as well, the communication that you have with an interviewer, as we said before, it's how you make them feel. And a lot of that is visual. It's not going to be so much what you say, but it's going to be visual, and it's going to be how your tone makes them feel, how you respond to questions, do you wiggle in the chair, those kind of things. So those are not AI related. That's nothing, you know, you're not going to be able to use AI to help you with that. But these are things to remember in the interview when you're practicing. It's all about that. You know, it's not all about the words you use. It's more about what your body language and tone show. Okay. Again, they wouldn't have interviewed you if they didn't think you had the ability to do the job. They want to hear you state it to them. They want to know who you are as a person. How do you communicate? So the STAR techniques that you use to create resumes, we encourage people to do this all the time. How do you create your resume? You put the bullet points on your experiences using the STAR technique. So it's situation, task, action, and results, right? So you want to be able to cover all of those bases with those bullet points. The interview is where you get to expound on that, where you get to state it in terms, or they might be able to ask you deeper questions if they're actually looking at your resume and reading the bullet points. They might want to ask you deeper questions. So on your STAR questions, you got to just make sure that you're telling them conversationally in the storytelling technique, more than, just the bland bullet points. So they're not reading it off the page, they're reading it from you. They're hearing you tell it. They want to know how you relate it. Because to what's important, fit in, you're going to be associating with their existing staff. One of the big things that they're concerned with these days, are you going to fit in? Can you communicate with our existing staff? Can you do that well enough that we don't have to worry about, giving you training in that kind of field? So we always add an R here at the MCOA. We use the extra R on the STAR process to be relevance. So it's making sure that your STAR situations, your STAR discussions are relevant. So it's STARR. That's why it's at the top of the page like that. But preparing for this, right, is just as important. So you get the STAR stuff, but to prepare in the interview, remember what I said, listening to the question, listening intently, and so that you're absorbing the impact. They're telling you about situations where the workplace is affected by whatever the situation is. Take that as if you're already an employee. And then think about it in terms of, well, how could I help? Listen to them, let them get it all out, and then set in your mind, pause for a second. Listen is the pause period, that you get to just kind of set your mind at ease and say, all I need to do here is learn. So I'm going to learn what's going on from these folks. And then I'll be able to respond better. Okay. I'm going to move on now off the STAR technique, but AI can really help you. You can put in there and put in a improve this kind of option, right? So here's all my stars. How do I improve on that? And based on my background, what would you suggest for options that I might look for? That kind of thing. Really get into the AI and just working on your STAR stuff. And get that first on your resume and then in your LinkedIn, but prepared for the interview. So AI can help you there. Oops. So I want to go now to what I was talking about before about iteration. Let me just check the time real quick here. Okay, yeah, I want to be done here in a quick few minutes. So iteration is basically the process of getting to, what's the problem, right? How do your stars solve their problem? You can use these prompts and you can iterate. So it gives you back, you do the baseline and then you keep asking it. Okay, can you expand on that? Can you give that back to me? A lot of AI tools, I've seen the experts say that if you ask it the same question 2 or 3 times, you're probably going to get a better answer, or a different one anyway, that can help you think. Okay, so the iteration process, and again, these prompts should be in the handout that Eric was referring to, is just basically asking that. I'm not going to go into these in real depth because we're kind of short on time. I want to leave some Q&A. But as I was saying, you may get different answers. So keep working on that. Other prompting tips. This model that Zara, who's part of this process with us, she's doing some of these sessions. Zara has what she calls the RCE model. The role, the context, and the example are important in your prompt. So you got to tell AI what its role is. Act as a career coach. You got to put it in context. What's the situation? Here's my experience. And then the example. Show me what a good response would be. That you're looking for the example from AI. So that's a good prompting model to use, the RCE model. Other things you can do, keep in mind, use prompts to create prompts. Ask AI, your AI, whatever you use, ChatGPT, Claude, or whatever, if it can keep your relationship strong, ask it to give you prompts. So tell me what prompt I would use to get to this. So toy with it, see what it will do. There's no perfect prompts. So again, skip the shiny objects, stay contained within what it is you're trying to do. Don't spend hours on end, and then you're finding this as a distraction or another procrastination tool. Be careful of that. Use your curiosity, your instincts, and your judgment. AI cannot provide you with judgment. It can give you wrong answers very confidently. And therefore, it's up to you to judge whether that's something valid. That gets tricky, but you've got to be able to do that before you start just complacently using what AI feeds you to deliver back to your audience. Okay. And this is another one. You can always ask AI to follow, in this case, the ICE, the Institute of Credentialing Excellence best practices. So to kind of contain it and keep it from hallucinating, from getting too far off course, because it's going to go through a lot of information. But if you contain it to within certain, it understands these practices say, this is the way that things should be communicated, and it'll kind of contain that. And you're again asking for citations, and in some tools you have to ask it to go onto the internet. I think ChatGPT, I'm not sure if it's still like that, but you may have to still ask it to use the internet search, include that into the search, and include citations, especially if it's going on to the internet. Okay. And you can ask it to, most of them, you can ask it to provide your ranking. How would you rank this in your confidence levels? Talking to your AI tool. And it will give you that. So it can help you rank some things. And another tip is a lot of tools don't, or you can lose things that you're working on if you take a break and go off and then come back. I've done this. And you try to go back in and, oh, where did it go? So if you're trying to create a dialogue that can set these LLM tools and give them your tone and how you think and things like that, you want to be able to save those if you can on the tool. If not, save everything in a Word document or something that you can then paste in as another prompt when you go back in. Okay. So a lot of information there. And I'm gonna run to get right back to where we can get out of here pretty quick. I'm just gonna put all these up here right now. Oops. So here's a list of thought-provoking interview questions. So what questions can you ask, right, about the job? And putting in these terms. My research indicates, in other words, I've gone on AI, I've done Google search, that kind of thing. Questions about the position, how does this position fit into the department goals? These are all good things that you can use, traditional kind of things that don't come from AI research or anything, but you just want to know what's going on. So if you're kind of caught at the last minute, these can help serve you too. All right. And I want to really spend a minute or two on this, ageism. So ageism and our age group are highly impacted by the AI phenomenon in a negative way, because it's another layer of technology that we have to learn. Our whole lives have been adapting to technology in the workplace. And the better you can do that, the better off you're going to be. This is no different. So recently, there's Bob Pulver does a podcast called AIQ. It's AI intelligence. So knowing that AIQ is important, right? And he says the talent shortage favors you, talking to the 50+ age group. Organizations will be competing fiercely for experienced contributors. You're not a risk to manage, you're a resource to leverage. Keep that in mind about your age. There's 5 generations in the workforce. You are the most experienced. The other one that really suffers from ageism is the youth. But so ageism goes across all spectrums, but in your case, your experience and what you can do, what you've shown you can do, and your resilience over time is your superpower. And that's abundantly clear when you think about the silver tsunami. By 2030, it's expected that 25% of the workforce is going to be over age 65. 25% of the workforce is going to be over age 65. The employers aren't going to have a choice. That's one way to look at it. The other way is this is a golden opportunity for you to show the power of that experience and what you can bring to the table. And there's a little quote I put on this page, and there's a prompt that's going to be in the handouts. But the quote is that basically you have two jobs as an experienced employee right now. It's to maintain the faith, and this is Leadership 101, maintain the faith that you'll eventually reach land if you're in a foggy lake somewhere, and to keep rowing. So those are things that in our age group can't be replaced. They can't be AI. They can't be, tech isn't going to do it. Skills, your skills, your experience, you may have to upskill a little, do that if you need to, but you have some great leverage in the workforce. Let me go back. So I just want to say this on closing. We don't have time to go into a lot of depth on this, but if you don't ask, you'll never know. And coming from sales, I can tell you, if you ever interview and you don't ask for the job, you'll never get it. You won't even be considered. But you don't have to be in sales. But today, what I said before, with the labor market the way it is, if you want to differentiate, if you want to really influence people that you believe in who you are and you can believe you solve their problems, you should be prepared to ask for the job at the end of that discussion. Don't let it go cold. You can be prepared. You don't have to use terms that are comfortable to you. And there's some examples of it here, but use terms that are comfortable to you, but ask for the job. Don't ever walk out without finding out at least what's the next steps in your hiring process. Okay, ask. All right. So this is just a list of mistakes to avoid, and I'm going to kind of blow through this real quickly because I want to get to where we're moving on. But if I had to choose one or two here, let's see. So winging it, right? Never. Don't wing it on an interview. Do the preparation, the procrastination, get over it. Do it. All right. This is a big sleeper question for us. Not answering the question specifically. And in fact, the MCOA in working with AARP, they did a study not too long ago, a few years ago, that showed that one of the biggest problems employers have with more mature employees is when on interviewing, they don't answer the question specifically, go into someplace that they think shows that they know what to do. So listen to the question. The way to avoid going off into your own world about that is to do the research on what their problems are now. Again, preparation, right? Preparation for the interview. Okay. So I'm going to move past this and we're going to go right to things that what you'll use from today's event. So I want to encourage you, don't just walk away from this and say, nice to know, what can you use, right? What are you really going to do? And the question I have is, do you have a vision on how to partner with AI after this morning? Are you at least starting to think about it? What can I do? A few prompts, start throwing things out there if you're at that stage. If you're deeper on, maybe hopefully there was something else you could have gotten out of it. But again, developing and shaping your story, use AI to help with that, the researching companies, finding and building network connections. You can use AI to do that, preparing for interviews, and finding belief in yourself. That maturity is a superpower. It's not a downside, it's an upside. Okay. So here we are. Questions, comments, epiphanies. I think where we are on the clock is we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, but we have a few minutes. And I've done nothing but talk, so I'm going to stop. And Eric, if you want, do you want me to put up the final slide? Or should we just...
No, we don't have to yet. I think that, so Haley, how are you doing on collecting questions there?
Yeah, that's
because
what
there have been a lot.
Yep, I can scroll through everybody's been everyone's marked their questions, so I think I can. Why don't I just rattle them off?
Yeah,
Sure.
Does
sure.
that sound okay? So
That
I'll
sounds
start with
great.
the first one that appeared. Um, David Swist asked to please restate the name of the book titles, George. So if you could maybe type those in the chat. You mentioned a couple, and the first one I tried to look up and I could not find it.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Sure.
Start from the Inside Out, I thought is what you said, but I did not identify a book. But if you could,
Sure.
titles and authors maybe in the chat would be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Let me
Okay.
let me see if I can do that. I'm gonna have to end my slideshow here to stop
Yeah,
sharing
that's
to do
fine.
that. So,
Okay.
there we go. All right. So if you want to move on to the next question while I
I will
gather
do
that
so.
information.
Yeah. Next one is from Michael O'Neill. His question is, when crafting your story, should you always focus on career-related topics?
Hmm. Yes, is the basic answer. Yes, for the sake of time, absolutely. You want to make sure and read the room, right? I mean, definitely most of the time you're going to be with somebody who's going to be a clock watcher or they get limited time. So yes, stay with the career stuff. If they start to lead outside of that realm, I would, okay to walk with them, but I'd be careful about that. Don't go too far.
Okay. I'm going to just answer a general question that's come up a couple times. I've answered it in the chat, but I'll just say so here. The slide deck will not be distributed, but this whole presentation has been recorded and it will be uploaded to the 50 Plus Job Seekers website in the on-demand section. Am I getting that right, Eric?
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
shortly that will be available to you.
Yep.
Um,
And also the summary, thrown that into the chat a couple times, and I can do that again just for convenience for y'all.
Yeah, and that's a really helpful tool. I've used it a little bit myself during this presentation to just experiment with some of these ideas and gotten some really interesting and helpful results. So that's where to go if you want to copy and paste some of these really well thought out prompts.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else is okay? A question from Karen Delolio. Many of us have applied to hundreds of jobs, perhaps been out of the workforce for about a year. The network has shrunk as colleagues have also been laid off. What are some networking suggestions other than research your industry? People did provide some answers in the chat, but George and Eric, if you have some ideas, maybe some out of the box thinking around networking ideas. I want to just say that I think in person, getting out of the house and attending things is always a good idea. Even if networking is kind of a background thought and go enjoy yourself, do something that it feeds you and your heart, but it's, having the background idea that it could give you some insight about your job search is not a bad thing either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Eric, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, just in terms of that, one thing that we've talked a little about here in this group is Toastmasters. Yeah, that and a lot of people that I've heard of. This is just anecdotally here, but is that people enjoy going to those sessions. You get to meet people, and you get to practice networking. That's what a lot of it is. You get to practice speaking in front of people. So yeah, it looks like there's quite a bit of reaction here about Toastmasters in the chat. So that might be there's regional groups. They're all over the state. So if you just go to Toastmasters.org, that might be a great starting place for you. And I know that another place that is great for networking, and I'm just going to toss this in, is your local senior center. You can go to the senior center and you can participate in activities, or you can just have lunch maybe at your local senior center if they offer that service. And there you can start talking to people, just start a conversation. Just sit with a group, and it's a great way for you to be able to practice your networking skills, or maybe even volunteer at your local senior center. So,
Well, Eric, I'm glad you said that because I was going to add two things. Volunteering. So, and a great place to volunteer is industry organizations. I've worked with literally, dozens of industry organizations in my career. I had to with what I was doing. I don't know, I can't remember a single one of them who would have refused volunteer help because people just don't have time. So if you're setting up chairs, if you're out, somewhere and no matter what you're doing as a volunteer at an industry organization, you are seen by people who can make a difference in your job seeking as somebody who's out there contributing and learning more because you're side by side with the people who are making a difference in the field. So always keep that in mind, right? Great place to start. And I want to add this thought too. Where are you going? Are you going to where you're going, or are you coming from where you were? So get that set in your mind before you start going out and meeting people, right? Make sure that when you're networking, no matter whether you're meeting people at the grocery store, at church, or doing volunteering, whatever we're talking about, where are you going is the most important thing. It's not where you've been. That may feel important right now, especially if you just lost a job and you got a lot of questions. You got to process that, get that out of your system, and then open your mind to networking. And you'll find people, everything you touch, every person you talk to, think of them as somebody who you might be able to help, or they might be able to help you. If not, that's okay. But if you just think with that kind of thinking, you'll come across a bunch who do fit into that. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Thanks,
Go ahead.
George. No, great suggestions. Charles Lee has this question. Since you mentioned verifying results and not just blindly trusting AI results, do you recommend running the same queries through multiple AI platforms? If so, which platforms do you recommend for multiple perspectives or verification strength?
Well, I'll give you just a brief thumbnail of what I've learned is that Claude is better for writing. Chat GPT is known as the generalist, but doesn't have much for citations. If you need information that has citations, Perplexity is supposed to be, and again, nowhere near am I the expert on the tools, but this is the general thinking that I've heard out there. So Perplexity will give you citations on almost everything. So it depends on what kind of information you're looking for. And yes, I love the idea of putting in multiple tools. You can get free versions of each. And what we talked about also of putting it back in, saying, here's the question again, give me an answer. And if it's hallucinating, it may tell you. Perplexity was found to be hallucinating. Do you know how? By somebody asked a question and said, do you know the answer to this? And it didn't, but it gave them one anyway. So, the tools can be used to justify themselves. And eventually, I guess they'll be honest with you. So anyway, yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question.
Thanks. I'm sort of scrolling down. A few people have mentioned feeling emboldened to, ask to get the attention of someone in the field in their industry that they would like to converse with in regards to a job seeking situation and social awkwardness. Do you have any advice for kind of getting over that hurdle and just going for it?
Yes, I do. And Eric, if you want to go after, I don't mean to jump over it, but be yourself.
Mm,
The most important thing you can do is be yourself. You're never going to sound right if you're in somebody else's clothes. You're going to be too tight. They're not going to fit. You're not going to feel good, right? Be yourself. It's okay to be introverted. You don't have to be extroverted. There's ways to communicate as an introvert that could be important to situational things that you don't have to change your world. Be yourself and start from there. And just try to expand to where you can feel comfortable. That's the most important thing. And hiring managers, employers will see that. And that's more important to them than having somebody who can come in and look like they're, a highly polished salesperson, right? It's more important that they feel who you are.
Do you think
And
that
same with networking.
do you think that what about the appropriateness and getting over shyness one might feel about sort of being in touch with someone that you find maybe through a chat GPT or AI search for professionals in your field who are really relevant to the kind of job you want? They aren't necessarily hiring, but you get some contact information. What's your take on um, emailing them or getting in touch through LinkedIn with a question?
Right. So I would say that knowing the contact is step one, but finding something interesting that you can talk about is step two. So you're go armed with something that's a question that you might want an answer for, but it might also be relevant to them. It's okay to ask somebody, I see you're in this role. I'm trying to transition into a similar role. And so I'm wondering if you can help me with the best ways to go about that today.
Mm. Hmm.
Considering the market or considering something I found, a tidbit, you only need small things. You don't need to change somebody's world to get their interest. They are interested in helping. Believe that. And this is really hard because people get ghosted so often. And I can't tell you how many people tell me I sent out 15 emails, didn't get one response. I tried networking. I tried doing that. It's hard. People are busy. And when you think about their work days, I can tell you how many people that I hear all the time say, I contacted that person, I contacted them 6 months ago. And suddenly they responded to me. They might have been going through an old file of emails and said, I got to contact this person. You just never know. So do it. Don't worry about the results yet. If, refine it over time, but make sure you're getting something, some activity in networking done it each day, even
Mm.
little bits,
Hmm.
and that'll help. It helps build your confidence.
Right. Thank you, George. More than one person has asked about which AI tool is appropriate for which function. And I'm getting the impression that's pretty subjective. I myself am not an expert. I want to recommend but some people have come up with answers based on their own experience, including Eric in the chat. So this is just a reminder to go ahead and save the chat because there's some valuable stuff here from your peers who are doing what you're doing and have quite a lot of knowledge to share, especially in regards to the specificity of these tools that we're talking about and what works best for which function you want.
And can I just insert here,
Please.
Haley, in order to be able to save the chat, if you have Zoom downloaded on your computer and you're in the chat window, right under the X that closes the chat window, there's three dots. And if you click on those three dots, it's going to open up another little window that says Save Chat. And so then and there is so much interesting back and forth that I am seeing in the chat today. People helping each other in the chat. It's just tremendous. So download. Okay, yeah. So not everybody has the three dots. I gotta say, but what you can do then, I always save the chat. You can just send me an email, eric@50plusjobseekers.org, and I'll send you out the chat file. It's not a big deal. So
Yeah, Eric,
thank you.
and as we always say, Melody, you, me, we all know that you see the value in that chat is not coming from me, is not coming from this platform, coming from the people. You're out here networking, you're sharing with people, and they're sharing with you, right? Start here, keep networking. So thank you.
Okay.
So Haley, anything
Well, there
else?
are more questions. I'm not sure how much longer we want to go, but I'm gonna let me shoot you this one. This is from Michelle Simino. I have 32 years of professional experience, and a friend who is knowledgeable advised me to just put the last 20 years on my resume and put the rest on LinkedIn. I'm resistant because the previous experience is highly important to demonstrate the depth of experience and skill. I'm in the environmental field. Do you have thoughts on this?
Sure. Eric,
Common.
you want to say anything?
Well, one of the things that we do preach around here is to, that anything older than 20 years is really going to give that information to people. So you have to be careful.
What
I
information?
would think that I
Information
would
of how old you are?
yeah, yeah. So experience is older than 20 years. However, if the job that you're applying for relates to skills that are in your that you have in your wheelhouse, that you have on your resume, I would include it under additional experiences or something like that, so that it is on there to, so that you'll be able to indicate to people, even if you get into an interview, then you can say, well, yeah, I put that under additional experience. It hasn't been recent, but I feel confident in my skill level because I've been keeping up with it through, I don't know, LinkedIn Learning, or whatever you might be doing. You thinking that I'm close here, George?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I would only say this, or I would not say anything about it may not be recent. Let them figure that out if that's important for them. But yes, put it on the resume.
Right.
So do your first 15, 20 years on your resume. I would say 15 is the most resume writers that I hear. They're talking about 15 years. After that, park a place at the end of the resume that says additional relevant experience, and just put it all into there. Don't put dates, and just a quick summary of the company and what you did, not bullet points. You don't have to put it all, but just to let them know that, oh, by the way, you're also going to get this,
I
right?
like that
Okay.
idea. And that relates to some advice that Hannah Latondo shared in response to a similar question. Change to functional resume versus chronological, or maybe just a portion of your resume, like George is recommending toward the end, where it's what you've done, and you're not necessarily disclosing when you did it.
And as far as LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to expound, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about having it on LinkedIn, even though I hear now they're asking, they want dates on everything. But but you are who you are. You're going to get there, and they're going to know who you are, right? I know, I've known anybody who had a face-to-face interview that that it's real. It's your white hair is going to show at some point, right? So that's the way I feel about it. I've done that. I've walked into an interview and had jaws drop. Like, who is this guy? Is this the guy we're talking to? Because in
Mhm.
his resume, he looks a lot younger. So, but eventually you're going to be explaining that. So I wouldn't be afraid to put it on in fact, LinkedIn, it might even pick up some recruiters they're not that interested yet in what age you are, but they're looking for those particular experiences. So I would think of LinkedIn a little differently than a resume.
Okay, so there's one last, thank you. This is so rich. There's one last question that's coming up from how do you delete an old LinkedIn account? And my first question is, would you rather you want to delete it instead of edit it and update it and make it current to your current situation?
I have two of them. I created a new one. I
Ah,
want to delete the old one, and it's hard to delete the old one. That's the
yeah,
problem.
I
I'm,
get
And
it.
I've tried to contact them, and there's no contact. It's like finding Waldo.
You're right, right. Frank, I feel for you. Everything I've heard is they won't let you.
Oh my
They
God.
Yeah.
delete it.
So
But
what do you do? Because one of them is overshadowing the other one. The other one, I had to basically revamp it to kind of dummy it
well,
down because the other one had too much information. So I created a new one, but the old one I can't get rid of. So I don't know what to do.
well, yeah, one suggestion I think relating to what Haley said is I might think about how do I put a note on the one that I don't want, and just put something in a header and say, if you're trying to reach Frank, he's moved to whatever your new link is, right? So put a full in address, so to speak, on the one and leave it empty. And then you're not worried about somebody finding two and trying to sort out, what's real here, that kind of thing. It's just an idea. Other than that, they, I think LinkedIn is just staunchly against deleting them for some reason. I think that they don't want to cause a run on the bank with people adding into it's a whole new function of the people they'd have to hire to handle that. I think administratively, what's real on LinkedIn is part of what LinkedIn's caution is. They want to remain their image is that they are the place to go, so they have validity. And if all of a sudden there's like 18 Franks on there, recruiters might be saying this tool's not good for me. I know a Frank from, there's 5 different Franks on here. That's the only thing I can think of is they're trying to save resource and image.
David Gianni is pointing out that, and I haven't verified this myself, but it's worth a try. There's an option under account, close and delete.
Oh.
So other people are adding some information about this. So again, the advice to download the chat. Looks like there's some helpful info here. Let's go with one last question. I do want to, I mean, we're over time, but there's so much to say about all of this and more. So Scott Thompson has noted, I've had recruiters ask me out of the gate my undergrad and master's graduation dates. Is it legal for them to ask this question? It took me by surprise.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you this, that if it's not illegal, they're bordering on unethical.
Yeah.
So, how you take that as a potential candidate is the most important question here to me, because if they're willing to do that, if they're so hard set on that, I might be willing to remember what I said about porcupining. I might throw back at them. Can you tell me why that's important? Don't answer the question. Answer the question with a question.
Yeah,
Right?
I like that.
So something that says, you really shouldn't be asking that, right? Or we want to change the subject here, correct? You know what I mean? That's gracefully, right? So
Yeah, some of those awkward
there's that.
situations.
Yeah.
Well, so that takes us to the end of our questions. So maybe it's time
Oh,
to
good.
wrap up.
Yeah, and I'll just speak for myself. I've really appreciated everybody staying on. I know we're running over, and that we typically try not to do that, but I hope it's been valuable for those who did stay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's great. Thank you.
yeah. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. Especially want to thank Haley for watching the chat and helping us with questions and that type of thing.
Yeah, my pleasure.
After you click out of Zoom, a survey will pop up, and we'll ask you all about this session. We do appreciate you all being here, and hope that you'll be here next week when we talk about AI for work, for communication and productivity and those types of things. So we hope to see you soon, and thanks so much for being here today.